All right, welcome back. In the Slot Podcast, episode 6. This week, Chris is only going to make a fleeting appearance just to give us some COVID news, and I'll ask him some tough questions about the Steelers. But we've got Connor
when
and
you
Henry
say
here.
when you say COVID, is that coming from our health and safety advisor for this very special Christmas podcast?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any advice for anyone at home. It's more
No,
of a
no.
general topic of discussion on
But,
what's happening in the COVID landscape of the NFL. Yeah, but thank you for trying that, Connor. Don't tune in for this pod if you're looking for health and safety advice on COVID.
no. Probably... health and safety.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Oh no. No, I don't even know what to say, Connor. You ruined it. As you've already heard, I'm here with Connor. Henry sat there laughing awkwardly away whilst we listened to Connor's terrible jokes. You know what? I'm just going to chuck it back over to you. In the Slotbusters number 4, give us a bit more.
Yeah. So welcome back to In the Slotbusters. And yeah, so I'll read it out from last week again, as per usual, and then I'll chuck it over to Josh and Henry, who will give me their thoughts on what they kind of came to over the last week. So last week's clue was, we're on the phone, but you're not the one who rang. We're chatting, and this is the fastest we can go. So guys, what did you think?
Well, I think this was comfortably the most difficult one we've had so far. I've got all of the ones previously. I do not know this one. I don't even have a guess. That's how tough. Connor stepped up the game.
Yeah.
My thinking was, the start of it, we're on the phone. I was thinking call. So I was thinking it might be someone called Calvin. So I was thinking Calvin Johnson, Calvin Ridley. Apart from that, like the end of it, this is as fast as we can go. I got nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I had no clue either. And I also know Chris didn't. But yeah, I kind of went a bit further than Henry and that call side of things. I was actually thinking maybe it was engaged, maybe it was on hold or dialed. So, for engaged, I was thinking it could be Russell Gage, but it doesn't chronologically follow the order of the player's name. And then for the surname, I thought maybe it could be something along the lines of maxed, top speed, as fast as we can go. But I don't have any suggestions or any guesses.
Yes, you're right. I think this week is the one where I did try and go a little bit harder to, as you guys all very easily got the first few. So I took away some of the more obvious clues for this week's one, and hopefully, and hopefully, as I bring this together for you this week, it will all start to come together. So you were bang on the right line with cool. That's why I brought that on. So it is cool. You're not the one who rang. It's my call, Michael.
Okay. All right.
And we're chatting, and this is the fastest we can go. So we're chatting obviously alludes to the fact that they're on a call. So it's my call, and I think you guys were literally on the right lines. And then the fastest we can go is where it might have stumbled you a little bit, and it is Michael Gallup.
Wow.
Or a Gallup is
Tough
the fastest.
One. Yeah, tough one.
Okay. It is a little bit.
That's not the fastest they can go, though.
It is.
Just to put a plot hole in there. But,
a Gallup is the fastest a horse can go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that does work. That does work. That's a tough one, Connor. Yeah, you stepped up the game there.
Yeah, you changed it on us, Connor.
I had to change it a little bit because you guys had it a little bit easy, I think, for the first few weeks where everyone did kind of get it. So
should have known.
Yeah.
We were talking, Henry, about which Cowboys player it was going to be. You were thinking
yeah.
I was thinking CeeDee Lamb. We didn't go one step further. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. They would have been the natural next guesses.
I did ask Connor before the pod if it was a Cowboys player, and he did have a smirk, but I couldn't read it. So
I still want to give it away because it was a Cowboys player.
Yeah. So. Well, thanks for not giving it away, Connor. Let's go on to the booms and busts from last week. Henry, any booms or busts that stood out to you?
Yes, 100%. I have been the biggest Bills advocate on this podcast all year long. I've loved watching them play, and particularly the two players I've loved watching are Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. A huge game week again, as they absolutely demolished the Broncos this week. Expected to win, but put up over 40 points. Josh Allen, 359 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, 147 receiving yards, and broke the Bills' single season receiving record. So entirety of Bills history, he's now the leading receiver in a season, and they've still got 2 games to go. So in terms of the trade for Stephon Diggs, it's always tough to make a first round pick and a big contract worth it for a player, but there's no doubt the Bills will be delighted with that, with Diggs. So that is definitely my boost.
Yeah, perfect. Any busts as well, Henry?
Yes. So my bust, I feel like we might all have this one, but it's got to be Juju Smith-Schuster. Negative fantasy points, including doing a TikTok dance at the start of the game and then getting absolutely drilled and losing a fumble. Again, the Steelers losing 3 in a row. So he is definitely a fantasy and real world bust. The other one, Cooper Kupp, Rams losing to the Jets, 39 receiving yards total. A really, really surprising game for someone you'd expect to have a big one against the Jets defense.
Yeah, exactly. And, talking about quarterbacks, and Juju was being thrown to by someone who also had a terrible week, Big Ben. Horrific play there. And Ryan Tannehill and Jalen Hurts both put up big numbers. We'll see if Jalen Hurts can reproduce again this week. Potentially was a waiver claim for someone who's in a championship of their fantasy playoffs. So we'll see how that one goes. Connor, what about for you? Any booms or busts?
Yeah, I'll stick to, I suppose, my role in the tight end department, and it was great to see someone else other than Kelsey do something this. And I think Waller's done it a few times this season at such a high level, but he's obviously had a fantastic fantasy week this last week gone. And for me, a bust is a bit of a continuation and a very good point from Josh, as just before we started the podcast, is ever since my the slot busters, I seem to have thrown him off as a good performer, both fantasy and real world. So yeah, he would be for me my bust for this week.
Great, thanks, Connor. Yeah, exactly. Darren Waller doing some really big things for, I'm sure, quite a few players. And give you some credit back where it's due, Connor. Last week you predicted Antonio Brown to have a good week, and he did. He performed well. Obviously, massively helped by a late touchdown, but they all come. David Montgomery, who we kind of predicted as one of those running backs maybe you wanted to look at down the stretch, had another big game, probably single-handedly carrying some teams to playoff berths and championship games, and a lot of wide receivers who had awful outings as well. Robbie Anderson, DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, and Amari Cooper. All these players who everyone's been high on. So interesting to see how it's turned around. But one other name to chuck out there, we spoke about him 2-3 weeks ago, Lil Jordan Humphrey, basically because of his name. But he actually scored a touchdown at the weekend, so I thought that was a cool one to bring up. The other thing that we talked about last week was the Pro Bowl. That was obviously announced this week. 2 of the people we thought were outside bets to make it were Justin Jefferson and Chase Young. They both ended up as Pro Bowl votes, so they are going to the Pro Bowl. Connor, you picked Chase Young. How pleased are you that he's going to the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, I was super excited with that. Having like obviously for us that was such a great conversation to have last week, and I think we really enjoyed speaking through some of those points as to why he deserves a spot. And it's just great to see with the impact that he's been having, that he has made it, and it's obviously super exciting for him, for Washington. It's really promising for them moving forward. So I think I think it's great.
Yeah, definitely. And Henry, Justin Jefferson, was he deserved? Obviously, players like Calvin Ridley didn't make it on the back of him, but there's only 4 spots. Do you think Justin Jefferson deserved to be one of those receivers?
I do, yeah, absolutely. I think already for me, Justin Jefferson's probably a top 8 to 5 receiver in the NFL. And that's unbelievable to say that at this early stage of his career. But yeah, fully deserving. And you looked at that NFC offensive roster, it is absolutely stacked, and Justin Jefferson does not look out of place there at all. I think he's had an absolutely incredible season and fully deserves to be there.
Yeah, definitely. The other three we mentioned, Eric Kendricks, William Jackson III, and James Robinson all didn't make it. James Robinson was a popular pick as a snub, so I wouldn't say he necessarily went under the radar as someone who didn't make it. But I haven't seen any news articles or anything claiming that William Jackson should have been there. Henry, we had a good discussion last week, and we both felt he should be there. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings?
Yeah, I loved the discussion last week, and I think some high name players have made it onto the AFC's defensive roster. We were having a little chat about Frank Clark before the pod, Josh, but Marlon Humphrey is on there, Stephon Gilmore, obviously very, very, very good players, but I think William Jackson certainly is deserving to be in that conversation. And highlighted by that is, they've just put up a great performance against the Steelers, limiting them to 17 points. So I think Jackson's time will come. It might take him going to a more well-known team, getting that big payday next season for him to get the true recognition he deserves. But I think in NFL circles, the contract that he gets this offseason will show how much he's valued.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's only two inside linebackers who make it. A lot of people are saying Devin White for the Bucks was snubbed as an inside linebacker. Obviously, Eric Kendricks didn't make it either. But, there's valid points there. And it goes a lot to say the strength of the league that we do have these tough discussions. Hopefully, we start to see them pay off down the line. But, yeah, that's great. That's great. Chris, let's move on to you for some COVID.
All right, cheers, Josh. I think the biggest news is probably Washington football team and their quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. He was pictured in a nightclub of some sort with no mask and in a large group, therefore violating the NFL's COVID protocols. He has since been fined $40,000, which is the biggest fine so far. Ron Rivera has since come out and said that Haskins will play this weekend if Alex Smith, who's a little bit banged up, can't go. The team have also removed Dwayne Haskins' captaincy from the team as a bit of a punishment. The next big issue is probably the Detroit Lions. Their facility was closed on Monday after two positive tests in the organization. I understand one is a player and then one is a coaching staff. And then there's been a handful more coaches who have been sent home as close contacts as per the protocols. So the interim head coach has actually been sent home as a close contact. So they fired Matt Patricia, and now they don't have an interim head coach. It might be one of the defensive team that are calling the shots. Elsewhere, Chiefs and the Rams both added one player as high-risk close contacts. The 49ers added a backup receiver and a backup quarterback onto the IR list. This means that CJ Beathard will likely play quarterback if Jimmy G is unable to be fit. The 49ers have just activated his 21 days to return. And then finally, a little bit of good news potentially. There are media reports that Buffalo plan to open their stadium for their playoff game and to run it as a test or demonstration event to hopefully prove that venues can be used and open with fans in place. So they're going to pre-test the fans, have contact tracing, social distancing, and masks. So I was just doing a little research. So the last Bills home playoff game was 1996. So it's 14 years. 24 years. My math isn't very good. But I'm sure the whole Bills mafia is very keen for that to happen. So watch this space.
Yeah, well done. Good correction there. I was going to jump in on that one, but you got there quicker than I could say it. It'll be good. I think we'd all love to be back in sports venues again. So hopefully that test proves positive, but I don't know if a test proving positive is a good thing anymore in today's world. Definitely very kind on Dwayne Haskins. I think everyone pretty much knows it wasn't a nightclub. That was definitely a strip club. Particularly with Ron Rivera being the head coach, who's a cancer survivor, obviously, particularly at high risk. I know it's a cliche to say that about Ron, and he's obviously a battler. But if that's your head coach, surely as a team, it's been drilled into you. So. Disappointing when, as a Seahawks fan, I watched Dwayne Haskins and I was actually relatively impressed considering my previous opinions. So very disappointing that his character's done that and let himself down again. But Chris, talking about teams and implosions, I mean, we already know what we're going to say. The Steelers, what is going on there? They just lost to the Finley-led Bengals, 27-17. Week 16, they've got the Colts week 17, they've got the Browns in what will be a huge divisional matchup. Thanks to their wins over the Ravens, they've secured the second seed, even if they lose out. It's the second seed within the division, I should say, which will be a playoff berth. So, not all's lost. But what are your thoughts? Do you think they're going to win any of those matches? What do you think about the postseason, and what about future?
Well, certainly not very confident going into the Colts game. They're playing really well, but the Browns have Baker, so that's a win. That's an easy win, isn't it? Surely. So yeah, we clinched the playoff berth, as you said there. But I don't really hold very high expectations going into the knockout season. Something's not right. Something is not right. Currently 11-3 on a 3-loss streak. We beat the Bengals 36-10 in the reverse fixture. So something's definitely not right. I made a reference to losing of a couple of big defensive players, namely Bud Dupree, a couple of weeks back. And the defense just looks beat. It just looks a shade of what it did in the first half of the year. And whether that was covering up for some of the offense weaknesses or inabilities, shall we say. So this week, obviously against the Bengals, only got 2 sacks against another bad offensive line. And watching the highlights back, so many spaces, so many wide open receivers. It was just really poor. First half was, let's just not talk about it. There was also a 30-yard touchdown run by third string QB Ryan Finley. 30-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, you're never gonna have a good day when that happens. And
honestly, it was so open. And there were a couple of good holes found by Gio Bernard, but he should have been brought down here. There, it was frustrating to watch it back and see he should be stopped. And then on the other side of the ball, I wonder if there's something wrong with Big Ben. I'm not sure if he's fully fit. Obviously, he was out most of last year with the elbow injury, and we had our offensive struggles with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. And then this year, he's started off really well. Had a couple of knocks to the elbow, but more recently he took a little knock to the knee. So Ben is not very mobile. We all know that. He's old, he's quite big, he's quite broad, quite strong. But normally in the pocket, he's able to avoid hits and avoid sacks and make a play with his experience, but he's just been lacking that the last few weeks. So then, I don't know, it's like a different team. It's just a different team.
Yeah. And obviously, we talked a few episodes ago about our QB rankings, and for us, Big Ben was very divisive. He was, primarily the separation between what we believed let you be a playoff caliber team and a Super Bowl potential team to not. And for me, the difference was Big Ben down to Matt Ryan. Definitely looking past few weeks, I probably would say Big Ben's fallen significantly down my rankings. Do you think this is just a bad patch for him, or do you think that's going to be the new Big Ben?
Well, I hope it's not the new Big Ben, but I think it's been coming. If it is the new Big Ben, I think it's been coming. He started off really strong in the league. Is one of the youngest, if not the youngest, quarterback I think to have won a Super Bowl. It's just he's not the same. He's not the same as what he was. Whether that's the age catching up, whether that's his mobility is not as good, the injuries he's sustained. I hope it's not the new Big Ben. But the thing, he is going to be a Hall of Famer. I think that's probably, you could argue it, but I think he probably is on the Hall of Fame side. But when would we draft another quarterback? When would Steelers be in a position to draft someone, first round quarterback? When would we?
Yeah, well, this year's as good as any, to be honest. I mean, you've got 5, potentially even 6 quarterbacks who have all got first round tipping. We'll take a look at them a bit later, particularly with the Heisman candidates in mind. But this could be the year. The other contentious player, really, within the Steelers at the moment, I know for a lot of fans, is Juju, primarily for his off the field antics, not being backed up on the field this season. Obviously, he's an impending free agent. What are your thoughts, Chris? Is he back with the team next year?
My gut instinct is no. I think he wants too much, and that was the sort of debate coming into this season. However, he's not been good this year at all. He scored 2 touchdowns in the first game. He's maybe got 1 or 2 others. But he's not he's not been good. So whether any team would pay him what he wants, I don't know. So maybe that does lead him to maybe sticking around for another contract. But we've seen Chase Claypool have really good games this year. We've seen Deontay Johnson essentially usurp him and become the number one target, high number of receptions, high number of drops recently, unfortunately, but I think that goes across all the receivers, including Eric Ebron. But yeah, my gut instinct says no, but you never know. It's been a crazy year.
Great, thanks, Chris. Connor, take us through in the Slotbusters week number 5.
Yeah, so after a much trickier one last week, I'm sure Josh, Chris, and Henry are all eager to get one right again between them.
I'm ready to go this week.
You got much more time over the Christmas break to really drill your minds down into this one and try and get it. But I'm sure, hopefully, this one is one that may be more achievable. So yeah, game week 4 or 5.
5.
Game week 5 of In the Slotbusters. And here's your next cryptic clue. So, I'm a species of bird. Yes, I'm a species of bird. And oh my God, do I have power? I'll say that one more time. I'm a species of bird. Yes, I'm a species of bird. And oh my God, do I have power?
Okay.
So
haven't got it immediately.
Have you?
No, I haven't. I haven't got it.
You haven't. Oh, you haven't. That's good. That's good. I was hoping I didn't go too hard, too easy, and back, but no, so that's good. So yeah, I'll give you guys a chance to think about it, obviously, throughout this podcast, and we'll come back to it at the end of the podcast as well. Anyone who's listening, make sure you comment in the comment sections on YouTube for your chance to win a miniature helmet of your team's choice. And according to Josh, as long as it's available on Amazon Prime. Do expect delays over the Christmas period. But yeah, so everyone who is listening, make sure you do subscribe to our channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Connor. Hopefully someone can bail us out next week if we're all stuck there without guessing who it is. One thing we were talking about with Chris earlier was the Steelers. What an underwhelming performance they've had the past few weeks. Henry, you wanted to look at some more of the teams in the NFL. Why don't you take us through that?
Yeah, so sort of prompted by the debate about the Steelers that we had a few weeks ago, I put a message in our group chat about the Steelers' remaining schedule when they were still unbeaten, and I asked everyone, how many losses do you think they'll have? And Chris was very much, we're going all the way, unbeaten, Super Bowl, here we go. And 3 losses later, they're very much not looking so bright. So it got me thinking about which team at the moment is the most overrated and which is the most underrated. So 3 weeks ago, I would have 100% said the most overrated team in the NFL was the Steelers. Their record didn't reflect how they were playing and what their skill level was, and even Steelers fans sort of agreed on that, I think, on the whole. So what I wanted to discuss today is who's the most overrated right now? Who do you think is underrated? We'll go around and share some opinions on that. I'll kick things off. For me, the most underrated team currently is actually the Buffalo Bills. And as a team who's leading their division, who has won their division and is probably favourite to win a playoff game, it's tough to be underrated. For me, right now, the Bills are the second best team in the NFL. They're the team that can challenge the Chiefs to the best extent, and that's coming from a Packers fan. So I know, Josh, you haven't been as high on the Bills as me. What do you make of that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I was ahhing about where I was going to go. Overrated was pretty easy in the end, so it wasn't much of a debate. But the Bills were in consideration at some point for me as overrated. You can't deny Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, what they've produced. But what we always do is we look at consistency in the NFL. We look at ceiling, but predominantly we look at consistency and clutchness. And there's just some element of that which hasn't quite clicked with me yet in my belief of Josh Allen. He could prove me wrong. I think he's very capable of it, but there's just something which I could just see some element of choking, some element of not continuing his regular season production into the postseason. I don't know what it is, but that for me is my concern. There's no proof validation there.
What would it take for him to solidify that? Is it just a good postseason, multiple wins, perhaps? Is that what you think you need in your mind?
I think for sure there's got to be multiple wins in a postseason for me. If they don't get to that AFC Championship game, this season has been a loss for them, in my opinion, where they are now. To be honest, for me to actually validate him as achieving all of those things this year, he would need to be Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion. I think they need to beat the Chiefs for me to believe in him 100% going into next year. If they don't, I'll still be a Josh Allen fan of sorts, and I'll still see him as a top echelon quarterback in the league, but he would still need to produce it next year. If he beats the Chiefs this year, then he's done everything for me. He's won me over.
Yeah. I mean, that's if you started at the beginning of this NFL season and said, Allen dueling against Mahomes, that's what I want to see, that's going to prove it to me, you'd been like, what on earth? How the hell is Josh Allen going to be in a position to do that? Is he even going to be able to beat the Dolphins twice a year? So he's certainly come a long way. And Connor, you actually made a good point a few weeks ago, saying that you think you feel like you'd need the Bills to win a playoff game for it to be a successful season.
Yeah.
Do you think they will?
Yeah, like it's one of those really tough ones, isn't it? Because you would have said the same about the Ravens. And I think that's the comparison I was making before, is that you would have seen the Ravens to go off and obliterate teams in the postseason. So yeah, it's a really difficult one with the Bills to say, will they be able to do it? But I mean, at this point in the season, taking the Ravens away from it, obviously completely different team, completely different point of time, you would like to say, yeah, they will go off and do it. They will go off and win a game in the playoffs. I'm a huge fan of that team as well. I think the one thing, just your point there as well, is that is it really harsh to put Josh Allen up against one of the best QBs that we might see for the next 10 years, that is on track to smash some records that are currently being held at the moment and within such a short time frame? But I think it might be a bit of a harsh comparison to make, to say if you're going to beat what could potentially be one of the best ever players of the game, that makes you a good quarterback. But also at the same time, the best beat the best. So to be able to compete, he would like to believe as well that he could go off and do it with the record they've got, with the games they've been playing. But I don't think it means that you're not an elite team and you're overrated if you don't beat the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is shaping up to be, bold claim here, but this is the closest we've got to the new Brady Manning in the AFC, because I could see this happening 5 times over the next 10 years in the playoffs. Chiefs play the Bills. We'll see what happens. But Josh, who did you go for as most underrated in the NFL at the moment?
Yeah, most underrated for me, it's a 3-way tie. For me, I could only consider a team who were actually going to make the postseason in this consideration. A very outside bet was the Bears. I think and everyone underrates them. I still underrate them as well. I wouldn't say they're a great team. I don't think they deserve to be in a postseason. I would liken them to the NFC East teams. But what they did against the Vikings, an up-and-coming team, they've won tough games. They've won a lot of games, which people don't really give them much benefit for. But, that defense is great. David Montgomery's come alive recently. He's had good matchups. And, as long as Trubisky remembers that Allen Robinson will be open, then they've got a chance in the passing game too. You brought it up, Henry, but 21 passing attempts for the Bears against the Vikings and 42 rushing attempts. So obviously they're going full course for pounding the rock with the running game and defending the ball, which, if they're winning games, they can continue to win them. If they're behind, I don't know if they've got a chance. But yeah, so Bears were one of mine. The other one is the Ravens. Recently, they've really started to compete. I think Lamar Jackson has got it back again. Could he develop it? Is he going to, go out with a whimper in the divisional round, in the playoffs again? Who knows? But he's got a better chance this year, I feel. Something more about an underdog story that probably suits him a bit better. And then the final one for me is the Seahawks. As a Seahawks fan, I feel like they've been criminally underrated because of some one or two outlying poor performances. The thing which they always do as an organization, and particularly offensive coordinators there, Brian Schottenheimer definitely included, when they're winning games easily, they dial the playbook right back. They don't show anything because they're so conservative. They don't want anyone to catch on to what they want to do if they're behind or if they're ahead or whatever in advance of the playoffs. And so we always see a completely different beast. I don't think there are many organizations within the NFL who do the same thing. Chiefs just beat you with what they've got. They'll show you everything and they know that you can't beat them. That's their game plan. But the Patriots of old were very much the same style of beast, but they would probably, develop their playbook a bit more in line with who they're playing each week. But I would say the Seahawks have got, a C, a D option, which we haven't even seen from them yet. And those plays will be proven. They'll be practiced every week in and out. As soon as we reach the postseason, as soon as it matters, as soon as the game's on the line, they'll be there. And I would be very surprised if they don't make the NFC championship game.
I think that's a really good point. And it's something that is so tough for analytics to capture. Is like the good teams don't need to be at their best throughout the regular season. I think Belichick was always famous for that. Like you said, Josh, the sort of mid-2000s Patriots, they just throttle down their offense if they'd won the game or if they felt it was not a particularly tough week. They'd literally change their offensive line every week just to trial different stuff, almost as though the whole regular season was the preseason. And then you get to the playoffs and it's like, right, game time. The Chiefs do a similar thing, but it's slightly different. They use the full playbook, all tricks, reverses, elite speed, deep shots. When they're up, they throttle the offense back. They go much less aggressive play calling and they throttle it back. And the Saints game this week was a classic one where they won by 3 points. But if you're into betting in the NFL, the Chiefs haven't covered a spread in 5 or 6 weeks, but they've won all of the matches. They get ahead and then they throttle it back because they don't need to show everything after that point. So, yeah, really good points there, Josh. I think the Ravens are scarier this year. Like you, I agree with that. I think the Ravens are scarier this year because I just feel like it is coming together at the right time. Lamar needs to win that playoff game. We've talked about it on the pod before. He needs to get that first one, and it may well be this year. Finally, Bears. I'm happy to underrate the Bears. I'll keep underrating the Bears. I'm so unconvinced, but like you said, they've beaten the Vikings and the Bucks, Josh. So
I'm with you there.
That to so much.
I'm with you there. I still underrate them, but I'm conscious that I am underrating them.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep doing that. I like the comparison to the NFC East. The NFC East. They're very NFC East. Yeah, I agree. What about overrated, Josh? What were you thinking there?
For me, it was a clear out-and-out winner. The LA Rams have got to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, coached by one of the best coaches. I think Sean McVay makes everyone in that offense look 10 times better than they are. Their running backs are dreadful. I wouldn't consider them, top half in the league for anyone. I don't think they could start on any other team. They can't even start for the Rams. Their wide receivers are, mediocre route runners who've been coached well, but are just scheme fits. They just fit and they run the red route, and the red route is the one that's thrown to by a man who couldn't throw to anything unless he was told exactly what to do all the time in Jared Goff, and that's exactly what happens. Yeah, their defense is good, but, defensive line, they haven't gone DB the same way, and their DBs, they're personality-wise, there's just something waiting to go wrong there as well. So, yeah, it's good defense. I'm not knocking the defense. Very good defense, top-level defense. But, if it wasn't for Sean McVay, that team would have gone 3-13 this season, in my opinion.
Wow. Bold words there. Rams fans listening, let us know. Let us know what you think about that, because I'd expect some strong responses there. Connor, what have you got as strong of an opinion of the Rams, or what do you think about the Rams?
No, I think Josh has really just gone against the point I made a couple of weeks ago, really.
I was going to say, because you were quite high on them a few weeks ago, weren't you?
Yeah, and it's like you always want to take it all back when you see them lose to the Jets, but potential Jets most underrated team in the NFL.
I'm not going there yet.
Do you want to go down that road? No, it's. I do completely agree. There's a lot of mediocre players in that team, but obviously with with the coaching of McVay and with what he's capable of doing with those players. And like Josh said, if you didn't have him, their season could be the other way around. There's always something there for them. And yeah, it's not that they're completely down and out. It's just obviously coming off a very, very tough loss, which will probably sour a lot of people's thoughts of them after this game week. And I suppose we'll only see a reaction to that if we see a reaction to that this week. So no, I'm not completely down on them in the same way.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point. We could have a debate here. Who did that loss hurt more, the Jets or the Rams, though? Because the Jets somehow found a way to not get Trevor Lawrence, and I think that's what we're actually going to come on to next, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah. You're so right, and it's so terrible. I mean, you saw what happened with the Jets against the Raiders, and I know you were going full conspiracy theories, Henry, feeling like they were throwing for Trevor Lawrence. They somehow managed to find a way to win a game against a top-level playoff team in the Rams at that point. Is there any chance now, if they don't have pick number 1, that they don't go quarterback? Is there any chance the Jets jet themselves and then go with Sam Darnold and pick up Penei Sewell, the lineman? Do you think that's realistic?
Surely not. Surely not. And you mentioned there, Josh, that the game against the Raiders is one of the most clear tanking situations I've ever seen in the NFL. You're up with 20, I think it was about 20 to 40 seconds left, and you just blow a coverage and allow a 40-yard touchdown. I've never seen anything that blatant. And then they fired their defensive coordinator as well. So maybe it was sheer incompetence, maybe. But the fact that they actually beat a playoff team this week, it just is so Jetsy. And now they look like they have blown the chance to draft a generational talent like Lawrence. I think it will all come down to their evaluation of the quarterback class. I think there's one thing they cannot do, and they cannot draft a non-quarterback at slot 2. If they don't back the quarterbacks, they have to trade out. They have to trade down, because some team will give up an incredible amount to draft Justin Fields. Talking, RG3 level trades with 3 first-round picks. So the absolute worst situation for the Jets would be to take even a great player like Sewell at 2. You have to trade down and acquire capital for a team that are so devoid of talent in so many places.
Yeah. They've already got 2 first-round picks this year. They've got the Seahawks pick, so that will be a late-round pick probably, at least beyond 20, but yeah, they could easily turn that into a few more. But go back to that point. Let's imagine on the flip side, you're the Jags. You've somehow won the lottery. You've got number 1. Probably something you didn't think was accomplishable. Is there any way the Jags overthink this and don't take Trevor Lawrence? Is there any way they go for Justin Fields as a scheme-fit quarterback?
For me, no chance. No chance, I'm afraid. I love Justin Fields. Big fan. I think he's got all the tools to be successful in the NFL. I think this is one that the Jags can't mess up. And I do expect them to take Lawrence. And I actually think then they're definitely a few years away from success, but they do have some pieces in place. And I think, Lawrence is the type of pick that does change your franchise. Keep him healthy, good coaching, and surround him with talent. And yeah, I think this is going to be certainly going to liven up a fan base. One of our loyal listeners, biggest fan, Joe, I'm sure is absolutely stoked at the chance of getting Trevor Lawrence. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing what he can do next year. Can he have a Burrow-like effect as he did on the Bengals this year?
Yeah, good point. And Connor, on that side of it, I know from a draft perspective, maybe, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence will learn more about them at the time. But for an organization, do you think it's more important to get the quarterback you think is the best, or find one that fits your scheme? I mean, my opinion is you build your scheme around your quarterback because they're so rare. Is that your opinion as well?
It is, and in a hard way of answering that question is almost as with so many quarterbacks with so many picks over the years, you see both sides of it make such a huge mistake and how it doesn't work. And it's the hardest thing about taking a a quarterback so early, and it's just obviously there's so much expectation on their shoulders. There's so much that can come of it. You can have the effect that we've seen with Burrows this season, but you can also have the effect, and it was probably one of the most standout ones over the past few years is Baker Mayfield being taken, because that was supposed to fit a scheme, and he wasn't necessarily the best in that class, and he got taken the way he did, and we're seeing the results of that now. So I think either way you answer that question, you'll never have a right answer, because it will just come to the expectation put on their shoulders, the team that's around them, so many variable factors that come into play with that you could, I suppose it's so, it would be so tough to be able to answer that question and say that's exactly the right thing you should do. It will come down to, I suppose, so much further of the analytics and what comes into it with that individual at that time. I don't even think it's down to necessarily just the scheme fit. Or to the pick of who's the best player. It comes down to that individual, and it changes every single season.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it's very easy for us to sit here and say don't overthink it. Take the guy that you think is number one, but these execs, these GMs, they're paid to overthink these things. If they're not overthinking, then they're not doing their job, surely. So yeah, love to continue that debate and topic moving forwards for the next few pods. We can take a look a bit more in depth at the draft as a whole, but one thing which is key is in college game, there's the Heisman. So that's given to the best player in college football. You've got 5 leaders for that prize at the moment. Leading the way is Devonta Smith, who's a wide receiver from Alabama. He would be the first non-quarterback or running back to win it for a long, long time. So I think probably he's still odds-on favorite. Potentially just because he's a receiver, but because he's had an incredible season. There are 2 other Alabama players as well. So 3 Alabama players as the top 5. You've got Mac Jones, the quarterback who's been throwing to Devonta Smith, and you've got Najee Harris, the running back, who will almost certainly be the first running back taken when the draft rolls around. And then you've got 2 other quarterbacks filling it out. You've got Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence actually missed 2, maybe even 3 games because of COVID this year, and he's still being considered for the Heisman. And then you've got Kyle Trask, who's transformed the Florida team, leading them on to the highest of levels, probably a Burrow-esque campaign. Henry, anyone who really stands out for you? Heisman is the Heisman. It represents college production. We ultimately consider it in terms of NFL potential, but if you were going to back one, do you have a particular favorite for the Heisman and someone you think will do well in the NFL too?
Yeah, I'm pleased to see Trask getting the recognition for what an amazing season he's had. I had a quick look at his season in stats, which is obviously not everything, but his stats are incredibly, eerily similar to Joe Burrow's Heisman year and championship year last year, which is incredible considering what Burrow did and the talent that was around Burrow. So I think Trask, I'm really pleased that he is there. For me, I think if you're going on NFL potential, there's only one place to look, and probably if he hadn't missed games from COVID, he would be more of a clear-cut favorite. But Trevor Lawrence for me is a special talent in terms of accuracy, ball placement, decision making, athleticism. He's got absolutely everything. People comparing him to the best prospect since Andrew Luck. I think that's fair. I really do think that's fair. I know Heisman voters can be a little bit interesting in their voting patterns sometimes, but it is nice to see some non-quarterbacks get some recognition. I think if you were going on a true most valuable player, I think it would be hard to look past Trask just for his incredible season that he's put up.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nice to see, someone, Mac Jones, make a name for himself and really put himself in that first round discussion as the 6th quarterback, which is incredible. Zach Wilson's had an amazing season too. Justin Fields has done pretty well. Trey Lance has got incredible intangibles. So it's going to be a fun draft. We're going to touch on that in several pods in the future. But let's do one running back, one wide receiver to look forward to. Connor, anyone this week that you're specifically looking at from that perspective?
Yeah, I think. Hold on, I just had him up. I think there's one. Give me 2 seconds on this. Come back to me. Go to Henry first.
All right, Henry. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got two receivers that I really like this week. One of them is one that that I have mentioned previously, and that's Darnell Mooney of the Bears, a really, really talented rookie receiver. I think I picked him last week, and he did manage to score a touchdown. So really like him this week. My top pick as a receiver would actually be Kiki Cutie of the Texans against the Bengals. We've discussed on the pod previously how the Texans seem to be losing all offensive talent very, very quickly, but Deshaun Watson playing at a really high level, and he's going to find open receivers. And QT's proved that he can get open for a couple of years now. So really like him against that Bengals team. I think William Jackson probably won't be on him too much, which should help. In terms of running back, J.D. McKissick from Washington had 22 touches last week. This guy, they just feed him the ball every single week. He's got a good receiving skill set. Used to be in Seattle, I think, Josh, so you're probably very familiar. So I think I like him to have a good week. And then final one I'll touch on, Myles Gaskin back from the COVID list. I'm going to be playing him in my fantasy championship match in our league. So need him to come through. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely. And JD McKissick used to be a receiver in college. So that's part of the reason why he's seen as such a, Swiss Army knife in the backfield. Connor, are you ready for us now?
Yes. Sorry, I just lost the page on my stat sheet there, so I just needed to go find it again. But for me, wide receiver, I think the stats are showing it since he's come back. Austin Eckler, I might have mentioned him a couple of times before. Obviously, really fancy him in terms of his matchup against Denver. But then also at the same time, he's had week on, week off, week on, week off. And this is his week to be back on. So I think he might be one. Obviously, there's inconsistencies there, but he's one of my ones to look out for in this championship week, or this week. It might not be championship for everyone. And then on my wide receiver side, I think, and this is going to be biased, you've already mentioned on this podcast maybe once or twice about my complete bias towards the Cowboys, but they are seeing form. They're coming back, making it difficult for that division. And I'm going to go CD Lamb, as we are seeing a little bit of pickup again. He did receive quite a few targets last week as well. I believe there was a couple of drops within that, but hopefully with the Cowboys seeing some form again, coming up against the bottom of the division in the Eagles, I'm hoping for some fireworks from him.
Yeah.
You're one game off the playoffs, Connor. How is that possible?
It's absolutely fantastic.
Let's see if Michael Gallup suffers in the Slotbusters curse that we were discussing. Yeah,
the new Madden curse.
Cam Newton, the new Madden curse, the one that really matters in the Slotbusters curse.
They're all wondering what it is. They're in their heads. They're in the change rooms of the week after, and little do they know when they listen to In the Slotbusters next week. Troy, that is why.
Troy Aikman had a terrible week as a commentator as well. You've cursed them all, Connor. But yeah, cool. Well, Chris isn't here to lead on the NFL picks, so he left it with me. Last week's scores actually let Chris make up some ground. He got 4 out of 4 correct, all of them correct, whereas all three of us got 2 out of 4. So Connor, your very clever tactic of guessing the same as me so you didn't fall further behind definitely worked. I don't know if that was the right tactic, but it worked. You achieved the outcome. So the total scores at the moment, Chris is on 33 out of 52. Henry is on 31 out of 52. So back in second place, Henry. I'm on 28 out of 52, and Connor is sat there at 25 out of 52. The only one of us below 500. Well done, Connor. So I don't know what else to say on that. Well done. You achieved your mission. Maybe don't guess all the same as me this week. So the first one to choose from is the LA Rams going up against the Seattle Seahawks. I think this one is pretty easy, surely. Henry, who are you going for?
Yeah, I mean, we've just talked about them as the most overrated team in the NFL, or you have anyway, Josh. You've just lit their fan base on fire. So I hope we get some Rams comments. But I am going to pick the Seahawks in this one. It's hard to pick any Jared Goff, Russell Wilson matchup any other way. So yeah, I'll take Russ.
Yeah, Connor, what about you?
No, I think the Rams have got too much to play for, so I'm going to go for the Rams.
Yeah, normally I would really struggle with this one because the Rams are the bogey team, but that's typically because they got 3 wins on the season, so it matters just that bit more to them. I don't see the Rams winning this week, but I could be wrong. But I'm also going with the Seahawks. Next matchup, Henry, you'll be pleased. This one's made it. The Green Bay Packers going up against the Tennessee Titans. Connor, who are you picking for that one?
Oh, that's a good game. I do like that one. I think I'm going to go for the Tennessee Titans.
Wow, Connor is going off the wall with all of these picks. Chris picked the Packers. Henry, can I put you down for the Packers too?
You can, yeah, you can. I'm going to back Aaron Rodgers. This is a real team that historically we would have struggled with. We really struggled with the 49ers for about 5 years in the playoffs when they had that elite run game and Kaepernick and a variety of different running backs just destroyed us. And to be honest, really, we've never fixed that run defense. We do focus massively on the pass. So I think this will be tough. I think it'll be high scoring, but I'll take Rodgers.
Yeah, cool. I'm also going for the Packers. So once again, Connor is the only one on the other side of the guess. It could pay off for you, Connor. Who knows? Just don't put some money on it. That would be my advice. Eagles versus the Cowboys. Now we can go to your game, Connor. I will tell you that Chris picked the Eagles. Who are you picking for that one?
Do I need to answer to say
yeah,
who I'm going to
for
back?
the record?
I've already just spoken through my bio.
Please state your selection for the record.
Cowboys,
sorry. Yeah. Didn't know if he was going to chuck a curveball on us then, Henry. Who are you going for?
I'm going to take the Cowboys. I do think the Eagles are one of the least talented teams in the NFL. And I expect them to struggle for quite a while. A big fan of Jalen Hurts, though. But yeah, Dalton's looked pretty good. Play calling's improved. More weapons. I'll take the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's nice to be split this way because I'm going to go for the Eagles. I do agree. Yeah, not a great team, but that quarterback versus Dalton, massive difference for me. And that Cowboys pass defense, still very suspect. Final game of the week, Washington football team going up against the Panthers. Chris has picked Washington. Henry, who are you going to go for this time?
Very surprised Colts Steelers hasn't made it in. From our Steelers fan, that's a good game, but I'm guessing he's had enough of people picking against the Steelers. Yeah, tough one. I will take the Panthers. I've been really high on them all season. They've had a bit of a slide recently, but I just think they're a smart team, and I have no faith in Dwayne Haskins at all.
Yeah. Well, you should know by now, Henry, that Chris loves to chuck a couple of gutter games in to remind us of how bad the NFL can be. Yeah. Connor, what about you? Who are you picking for that game? Panthers or Washington football team?
Well, I'm going to do this again based out of what I need to happen for the Cowboys to make the playoffs in a very successful season that has been for them. So, yeah, I'm going to go for the Panthers.
Connor, you should have done this for all of your predictions so far. There's no wonder why you're trailing so hard, as if you're picking the games that you want to win.
It's got to the point where I have given up on the NFL picks game. So,
fair enough.
Anything can happen from here. And
when was that? When was that decision made? Week 1?
Probably the moment that I fell behind when you were losing for what I believe has been a longer period for I'm losing. But it's ended up this way, and I'm just glad that I've got in the slot busters to manage.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased for you there, Connor. That sounds like a nice crutch to have at this time. I'm actually going to follow Chris again. I'm going to back the football team. I do think that the Panthers are the better team, but I think this one's got an upset written all over it. I think there's a high chance that the football team are playing for something which the Panthers aren't. And the rest of that team can pull everything around. Alex Smith, if he's fit, will be starting. If not, Dwayne Haskins will be. And I wasn't actually unimpressed watching him as a Seahawks fan.
He was all right last week, wasn't he? That was
He
his best
was.
NFL game, I think. But I just don't have any faith. I can see a
Yeah.
few turnovers coming, but
Yeah, the thing is, he just looked to Logan Ryan and J.D. McKissick, as you mentioned before. He literally just looked short. He's got a cannon of an arm, so he should be looking further down the field. But if it works, it works. And you play a dump-off game against Seattle, that always works against them. And the Eagles, they're so patchy all over the place. There's going to be holes and there's going to be underneath routes. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. Cheers for the NFL picks, guys. Sorry I wasn't as emphatic as Chris usually is. But, Connor, maybe you can bring us some enthusiasm back to the pod and take us on to the In the Slot Busters. Remind us what it was for this week.
Yeah, so back to the important game. So just to recap on the In the Slot Busters, as Josh just said, this week's cryptic clue for you is: I'm a species of bird. Yes, I'm a species of bird. And oh my God, do I have power?
And
So I'll leave
currently,
you with that one.
all around the league, NFL players are terrified, trying to work out this just in case it is themselves.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the curse is now on them.
Yeah, they're just wondering why their name was like a species of bird. That's all they're wondering. Yeah. Thank you, Mum and Dad. Well, hopefully they buck the trend. They have a great week and they carry someone to a fantasy championship. But cheers for joining us again, guys.